The capture. The cold, metallic air filled the small, dark chamber where Samuel Griffin found himself restrained. The Huron soldiers had stripped him of his armor and shackled him to the cold, damp wall. The room reeked of despair and old blood, a testament to the countless prisoners who had met their end here. Samuel was different, though. He had been trained for this. He knew what awaited him, and he had steeled himself for the pain and torment to come. A door at the far end of the room slid open with a hiss, and in stepped Alter, the towering Huron commander. His reptilian eyes gleamed with sadistic pleasure as he approached Samuel, his clawed hands clasped behind his back. "Strip the human filth naked and shackle him to the cell wall," Alter commanded his soldiers. "Let's see how long this barbaric species can survive the agonies." Samuel gritted his teeth, refusing to show fear. He had faced death countless times before, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival. It was about keeping the vital information he held out of the hands of the enemy. The fate of the entire Terran fleet, and perhaps all of humanity, depended on his ability to resist the Huron's torture. The soldiers followed their commander's orders with mechanical precision. They tore off Samuel's undersuit, exposing his scarred and battered body, a canvas of the countless battles he had fought. The cold metal shackles bit into his wrists and ankles as they bound him to the wall, leaving him vulnerable to whatever sadistic torment Alter had planned. "You dare defy the Huron dominion," Alter sneered, stepping closer. "But you will break, human. You will beg for death long before your pathetic fleet arrives." Samuel met the alien's gaze with a defiant glare, his voice low and unwavering. "Do your worst, lizard breath. We humans don't break. We bend, we adapt, and we come back stronger. And when we do, we'll make sure you taste the dirt of 1,000 worlds we've conquered." Alter's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing with rage. "Begin the interrogation," he ordered, his voice cold and menacing. "Break his body, shatter his mind, and record his screams for all the human scum to hear. Let them know the fate that awaits them." The cell door slammed shut, plunging Samuel into darkness. The sound of machinery whirring to life echoed around him, followed by the sharp electrical hum of the Huron's torture devices. Samuel took a deep breath, steadying his mind. The Huron believed they could break him, but they had no idea of the depths of human resilience. He had been trained to endure, to persevere, and to protect the secrets locked within his mind. Outside the cell, the Huron soldiers laughed and jeered, eager to watch the human warrior's will crumble under their brutal ministrations. But as the first wave of pain washed over him, Samuel clenched his fists, focusing on the one thought that would see him through this nightmare. He had to survive. Not for himself, but for humanity. The hours bled into each other as Samuel endured the Huron's relentless torture. His body was battered, his flesh torn and burned, but his spirit remained unbroken. Every time Alter returned to the cell expecting to see a broken man, he found Samuel still standing, still defiant. "Why won't you break?" Alter hissed, his frustration palpable. "You are nothing more than a weak, fleshy creature. You should have begged for death by now." But Samuel only smiled, his voice hoarse but resolute. "You underestimate humanity, Alter. We've faced worse than you and lived to tell the tale. You can hurt me, but you will never break me." The Huron commander stormed out of the cell, his mind racing with thoughts of how to shatter this human's unyielding resolve. But deep down, a seed of fear had been planted in Alter's mind. This human was different, stronger than the others, and that strength threatened to unravel everything the Huron Dominion had built. The unyielding spirit. The hours stretched into days as Samuel Griffin withstood the relentless assault on his body and mind. The Huron soldiers tried everything in their arsenal: electric shocks, chemical burns, bone-crushing pressure, but nothing broke the human's spirit. Each session left him bloodied and bruised, but he never once begged for mercy. Alter paced outside the cell, his frustration mounting with every failed attempt to extract the vital information. He was the commander of one of the most feared fleets in the galaxy, yet this single human had defied him in ways he could never have anticipated. "This is impossible," Alter muttered to himself, his claws tapping rhythmically against the cold metal wall. No species can endure this much pain and still resist. A cruel smile spread across his face as a new idea formed. Physical torture had its limits, but psychological torment, that was where true power lay. Alter decided it was time to try a different approach. He entered the cell once again, this time with a more sinister plan. Samuel was chained to a chair now, his head drooping from exhaustion, but his eyes still burned with that unquenchable fire of defiance. "You think you're strong, human?" Alter said, his voice low and venomous. "But let's see how long your strength lasts when it's your people who suffer." With a gesture, Alter signaled to his subordinates. They wheeled in a large screen, setting it up directly in front of Samuel. The screen flickered to life, showing live footage of a human colony under attack by Huron forces. Samuel's heart sank as he watched the scene unfold. The colony's defenses were overwhelmed, and Huron soldiers rampaged through the streets, cutting down civilians without mercy. "Surrender or watch your people die," Alter hissed, leaning close to Samuel's face. "The choice is yours." Samuel's eyes were glued to the screen, his heart wrenching with each human life snuffed out by the merciless onslaught. But just as it seemed all hope was lost, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A fleet of human warships dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons blazing as they engaged the Huron forces in a fierce space battle above the besieged colony. Hope surged through Samuel's veins. The Terran fleet had arrived, and with them, the promise of retribution against the Huron scum. His resolve hardened, and he turned his defiant gaze back to Alter. "You underestimate us," Samuel said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "Humanity doesn't give up, not on our people, not on our homes. We fight back." Alter's cruel smile faltered as he realized his plan wasn't working. The human's resolve was stronger than ever. The Huron commander slammed his fist on the console, causing the screen to shatter, its pieces clattering to the ground. "Enough," Alter roared, his patience wearing thin. "You will tell us what we want to know, or I will make your suffering eternal." Samuel remained silent, his eyes locked on the broken pieces of the screen. He knew that every moment he resisted, the Terran fleet was getting closer. Every moment he held out meant more time for his people to rally, to fight, to win. The door to the cell opened, and a new figure entered. A Huron scientist carrying a syringe filled with a sickly green liquid. Alter stepped back, allowing the scientist to approach. "This is a neurotoxin," Alter explained, his voice calm and cold. "It won't kill you, but it will bring your worst nightmares to life. You'll beg for death before I'm done with you." Samuel tensed as the scientist approached, the syringe gleaming in the dim light. He knew this was going to be the hardest test yet, but he also knew he couldn't let them break him. Not now, not ever. The scientist plunged the syringe into Samuel's neck, injecting the neurotoxin directly into his bloodstream. The effects were immediate. The cell walls seemed to melt away, replaced by a nightmarish landscape of blood and fire. Samuel found himself on a battlefield, surrounded by the mangled corpses of his fellow soldiers. Their lifeless eyes stared at him accusingly, their blood staining his hands. "You failed us," they whispered, their voices echoing in his mind. "You led us to our deaths." Samuel shook his head, trying to banish the visions, but they only intensified. The faces of his friends, his family, all morphed into the same gruesome scene. He watched helplessly as they were slaughtered before his eyes, their screams tearing through his soul. But even in the depths of this nightmare, Samuel clung to the one truth that anchored him to reality. He was a soldier of the Terran fleet, sworn to protect humanity. He would never betray his people, no matter the cost. Alter's voice cut through the nightmare, taunting him. "Surrender, and the pain will end. Resist, and you will suffer endlessly." Samuel gritted his teeth, focusing on the image of the Terran fleet fighting above the colony, of his comrades pushing back the Huron invaders. They were counting on him. He couldn't let them down. With a roar of defiance, Samuel channeled every ounce of strength and willpower he had left. The chains that bound him shattered, and he launched himself at Alter, catching the Huron commander off guard. The two warriors clashed in a brutal dance of fists and claws, trading blows that would have felled lesser men. Samuel's vision swam, the neurotoxin still coursing through his system, but he fought on, driven by sheer determination. Alter was stronger, faster, but Samuel had the advantage of human adaptability and resilience. He weathered the Hiron's attacks, retaliating with precise strikes that slowly wore down his opponent. In a final, desperate move, Samuel tackled Alter to the ground, his hands closing around the alien's throat. The Hiran commander thrashed and struggled, but Samuel's grip was unbreakable. "Humans don't break," Samuel growled, his voice a mix of pain and triumph. "We survive." The turning tide Samuel Griffin's hands trembled as they tightened around Alter's throat. The Huron commander's eyes bulged in a mixture of shock and terror. For the first time, Alter truly grasped the depths of human resilience. He had underestimated his enemy, and now, that mistake was about to cost him everything. But before Samuel could finish the job, the cell door burst open, and a group of Huron guards stormed in, weapons drawn. They rushed Samuel, pulling him off their commander and slamming him to the ground. He fought them off with every ounce of strength he had left, but the neurotoxin still coursing through his veins made his movements sluggish, his vision blurry. Alter staggered to his feet, gasping for air, his claws clutching at the deep bruises on his neck. He stared down at Samuel, his expression a twisted mask of fury and fear. "Get him out of my sight," Alter spat, his voice hoarse. "Throw him back in the cell and keep him under heavy guard. He's more dangerous than I thought." The guards dragged Samuel away, his body weak and battered, but his spirit unbroken. As they locked him back into the dark, cold cell, Samuel knew he had won a small victory. He had shaken Alter's confidence, and in doing so bought more time for his people. Alone once more, Samuel slumped against the wall, his breath ragged. The effects of the neurotoxin still lingered, and he struggled to focus his thoughts, but he couldn't let himself rest. Not yet. There was still too much at stake. He closed his eyes and forced himself to think clearly. The Terran fleet was out there, fighting to save the colony and to find him. He just needed to hold on a little longer. But how long could he last in this condition? How much more could his body take? As he grappled with these thoughts, the door to his cell opened again. Expecting more guards, Samuel tensed, ready to fight. But instead, a different figure stepped into the dim light. An unfamiliar Huron. Shorter and less imposing than the others, with softer, more calculating eyes. "Who are you?" Samuel demanded, his voice weak but steady. The Huron didn't answer immediately. Instead, they moved closer, their movements cautious but not hostile. "My name is Zalor," the Huron finally said, their voice a hushed whisper. "I'm different from the others." Samuel narrowed his eyes, suspicion flaring. "What do you want?" "I'm here to help you," Zalor replied, glancing nervously over their shoulder as if afraid of being overheard. "I belong to a faction within the Huron society that opposes the war against humanity. We believe that this conflict is unnecessary and that both our species could benefit from cooperation." Samuel stared at Zalor, trying to gauge their sincerity. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I have nothing to gain from lying," Zalor said, their tone earnest. "I can't offer you freedom, not yet. But I can offer you a way to communicate with your fleet. I've disabled the monitoring systems in this cell so we can speak freely for now. If you give me the location of your fleet, I can send a message on your behalf." Samuel's mind raced. It could be a trap, another ploy by Alter to break him. But the Hiron's demeanor didn't match that of his sadistic captors. And if there was even a chance that Zalor was telling the truth, it could mean the difference between life and death for the Terran fleet. After a moment's hesitation, Samuel decided to take the risk. "All right," he said, his voice firm. "Here's what I need you to tell them." Zalor listened intently as Samuel relayed the coordinates of the Terran fleet and a brief but urgent message detailing the situation. Zalor's eyes widened as they took in the gravity of Samuel's words, but they nodded in understanding. "I'll get this to your people," Zalor promised. "But you need to stay strong. Alter won't stop until he has what he wants, and he'll try to break you again." "I've been broken before," Samuel replied, his voice laced with determination. but I always come back stronger." Zaylor gave him a nod of respect. "I'll do everything I can to help. Just hold on." With that, Zaylor slipped back out of the cell, leaving Samuel alone in the darkness once more. But this time, he felt a renewed sense of hope. If Zaylor was true to their word, help was on the way, and Samuel would hold out until it arrived, no matter what. Days passed, and the Huron continued their attempts to break Samuel. But no matter what they tried, more neurotoxins, psychological manipulation, or physical torture, Samuel endured. His body bore the scars of their efforts, but his mind remained unyielding, his resolve as strong as ever. Meanwhile, Zaylor worked tirelessly in the background, using their position within the Huron ranks to undermine Alter's plans. They fed Samuel information about the Hiran movements and defenses, allowing him to stay one step ahead of his captors. And then, one day, it happened. The entire ship shuddered as an alarm blared through the corridors. Samuel's heart leaped in his chest as he recognized the sound. It was a battle alarm. The Terran fleet had arrived. The door to his cell burst open once again, but this time it wasn't Hiran guards who entered. It was a group of human soldiers, their armor gleaming in the dim light, led by none other than Admiral Grayson Wolfe himself. "Stand down, soldier," Wolfe ordered, his voice a mixture of relief and authority. "We've got you." Samuel felt a wave of emotion wash over him as the soldiers moved to release him from his chains. Exhausted and battered, he struggled to his feet, his legs nearly giving out beneath him, but he refused to fall. "Sir," Samuel said, his voice hoarse but filled with determination, "with all due respect, I'm not finished with this bastard yet." Wolfe appraised Samuel for a long moment, his gaze piercing. He saw the fire still burning in the soldier's eyes, the unyielding resolve that had kept him alive through unimaginable torture. After a moment's hesitation, Wolfe nodded and tossed Samuel a pulse rifle. "All right, Griffin," Wolfe said, a hint of a smile tugging at his scarred lips. "You've earned this, but make it quick. We've got a ship to take down." Samuel caught the rifle, a fierce grin spreading across his face. He turned towards the corridor, his grip tightening on the weapon as he prepared for the final confrontation. This was it. The moment he had fought so hard to reach. Alter and his forces would pay for every drop of human blood they had spilled. And Samuel Griffin would be the one to deliver that justice. The final confrontation. Samuel Griffin led the charge through the corridors of the Heron warship, pulse rifle in hand and a fire burning in his eyes. Behind him, Admiral Wolfe and his elite soldiers moved with precision, clearing the path as they made their way towards the command center where Alter awaited. The air was thick with the scent of scorched metal and the acrid tang of ozone from plasma fire. Samuel's heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was clear, focused on one goal, bringing down the Huron commander who had inflicted so much pain and suffering on him and his people. As they approached the command center, the ship shuddered again, the lights flickering as the Terran fleet's assault intensified. The sound of distant explosions reverberated through the walls, a reminder that the battle was far from over. But Samuel pushed those thoughts aside, concentrating instead on the task at hand. "This is it," Admiral Wolfe said, coming to a halt at the entrance to the command center. The door was sealed shut, reinforced by layers of alien alloy, but that wouldn't stop them. "Griffin, we're counting on you to finish this." Samuel nodded, stepping forward. He placed a hand on the door, feeling the cold, unforgiving metal beneath his fingers. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the culmination of all his pain, all his suffering. It was time to end it. "Blow the door," Wolfe ordered. A demolition expert from the team moved in, placing charges along the edges of the door. Everyone took cover, and a few seconds later, a deafening explosion rocked the corridor as the door was blown inward. Smoke and debris filled the air, but Samuel didn't hesitate. He surged forward, leading the charge into the command center. Inside, the room was bathed in the eerie green glow of holographic displays. Huron officers scrambled to respond to the breach, but they were too slow. Samuel's rifle barked, cutting down the first wave of resistance with deadly precision. Around him, Wolfe's soldiers spread out, engaging the remaining Huron forces. but Samuel's focus was solely on Alter, who stood at the far end of the room, his grotesque form illuminated by the flickering screens. The Huron commander's eyes locked onto Samuel's, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. "You should have stayed in your cell, human," Alter hissed, his voice dripping with malice. "Now you'll die here, along with your pitiful comrades." "Not today," Samuel growled, raising his rifle. "This ends now, Alter." The Huron commander sneered, his claws flexing as he activated a pair of energy blades. "Come then. Let's see if you're as strong as you think you are." With a roar, Samuel charged at Alter, firing his rifle in controlled bursts. Alter dodged the shots with surprising agility for a creature of his size, closing the distance between them in the blink of an eye. Samuel barely had time to react as the energy blades slashed towards him, their edges humming with lethal power. He ducked, rolling to the side and coming up with his rifle aimed at Alter's chest. He squeezed the trigger, but Alter was already moving, his blades slicing through the air with deadly precision. Samuel was forced to backpedal, his rifle sparking as one of the blades glanced off the barrel. Around them, the battle raged. Wolf's soldiers were holding their ground, but the Hyran forces were fierce, fighting with the desperation of a cornered animal. Plasma fire and explosions filled the air, but Samuel blocked it all out, his world narrowing to the deadly dance between him and Alter. "Is this all you've got?" Alter taunted, his blades flashing as he pressed his attack. "I expected more from the so-called heroes of humanity." Samuel gritted his teeth, refusing to rise to the bait. He knew Alter was trying to unsettle him, to throw him off balance. But Samuel had faced too many demons to be shaken now. He sidestepped a vicious strike, retaliating with a burst of rifle fire that clipped Alter's shoulder, eliciting a snarl of pain from the Huron. "You're wrong about us," Samuel said, his voice steady. "We're not just heroes. We're survivors, and we don't back down." With that, he surged forward, closing the gap between them. Alter swung his blades, but Samuel was ready, ducking under the arc of the weapons and slamming the butt of his rifle into Alter's gut. The Huron commander staggered back, momentarily winded, and Samuel seized the opportunity. He dropped his rifle, drawing his combat knife in one swift motion. Alter recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. Samuel drove the knife into the Huron's side, twisting the blade as he pulled it free. Alter roared in pain, his energy blades faltering as he clutched at the wound. "This is for everyone you tortured," Samuel snarled, slashing the knife across Alter's chest. "For every life you've destroyed." Alter stumbled, blood oozing from the deep gashes Samuel had inflicted. But the Huron commander wasn't finished yet. With a final desperate effort, he lunged at Samuel, his blades aimed for the human's heart. Samuel dodged, but one of the blades grazed his side, sending a flare of pain through his body. He gritted his teeth, refusing to give in, and with a roar of pure defiance, he plunged his knife into Alter's throat. The Huron commander gurgled, his eyes wide with disbelief as he staggered back. Samuel yanked the knife free, watching as Alter's life drained away, the Huron's body crumpling to the floor. It was over. Alter was dead, but there was no time to celebrate. The command center shuddered violently, and Samuel looked up to see Wolf and his soldiers finishing off the last of the Hyran forces. The ship was beginning to collapse, its systems failing under the relentless assault from the Terran fleet. "Time to go, Griffin," Wolf shouted, waving him over. "This ship's not going to last much longer." Samuel nodded, retrieving his rifle and sprinting towards the exit. They fought their way back through the corridors, the ship tearing itself apart around them. Explosions rocked the walls and the floor buckled beneath their feet, but Samuel and the others kept moving, determined to escape before it was too late. Finally, they reached the hangar bay, where a human dropship waited with its engines already running. Wolf's soldiers piled in, covering each other's retreat with interlocking fields of fire. Samuel was the last to board, turning to take one final look at the Huron warship that had been his prison. With a grim satisfaction, he watched as the ship's hull began to buckle, the explosions tearing it apart from within. Then he turned and ran up the ramp, the dropship lifting off just as the hangar bay was consumed in flames. As the dropship soared away from the doomed vessel, Samuel strapped into his crash seat, his chest heaving with exhaustion. He watched through a viewport As the Huron warship exploded in a blinding flash of light, the debris scattering across the void of space. It was over. The Huron threat had been dealt a devastating blow, and Samuel had survived. But as he sat there, surrounded by the soldiers who had fought beside him, he knew the battle was far from over. The war against the Huron Dominion would continue, and Samuel would be there, fighting every step of the way. For now, though, he allowed himself a moment of respite, the weight of his ordeal finally lifting from his shoulders. He had endured the unimaginable, faced down his demons, and emerged victorious. And in doing so, he had shown the Huron and the entire galaxy what humanity was truly capable of.